Meanwhile, the stalemate over Israel's controversial judicial reforms seems unending. Now, the demonstrators are back on the streets for denouncing the legislation, despite Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's dropping a key part of it. The weekly demonstration have now entered their 26th consecutive week as we speak. Hundreds of demonstrators took to the streets of Tel Aviv on Saturday with national flags and chants of democracy. Now, the demonstration comes just days after discussions over the reforms were held in Israeli parliament. Some of the demonstrators even blocked a nearby highway, which affected the traffic for a brief period of time. The protesters say that they will continue to build pressure on the government to roll back the reforms, no matter what.
I came here today like I've been coming for the past 25 weeks to make sure that Israel will remain a democracy, that we will save the amazing thing that we've created here in the past 75 years, and Israel will remain a high-tech nation, a free country, and an amazing place to live in.
Everything continues to move. They try to pass each day new laws that will limit our civil rights. And this concerns everyone in the country. It hurts Jews, it hurts Arabs, it hurts students, it hurts workers, and we're trying to stop it. And like they try to do something horrible every day, and so far the protests are successful in holding them back. And we don't know what is going to happen in the future, but we try and we fight for our home.
These reactions come despite Netanyahu announcing that he is dropping one of the key clauses of the legislation. This section curbed the powers of the Supreme Court and gave politicians a greater say in the selection of the judges in the country. But the dissenters don't seem satisfied. According to them, this reform will still weaken the judiciary and limit the judicial oversight on the laws and the government's decisions as well. This will pose a direct threat to the civil rights and the rights of minorities and the marginalized groups. They also believe that corruption will flourish because of this legislation. On Wednesday, more than 100 Israeli Air Force reservists said that they will refuse to show up for duty if Netanyahu's right-wing government moves ahead with the plan. But still, the Prime Minister is looking forward to proceed. Earlier, he was forced to put the legislation on a halt owing to the severity and magnitude of the demonstrations. But the situation does not look better at the moment either. This despite coalition lawmakers indicating that the new bill would be a far softer version of the previous proposals.
Premier Li is the ex-premier of the People's Republic of China and a member of the Chinese Communist Party's Central Committee Politburo Standing Committee. Premier Li has a distinguished career in public service, having led the economic and social development of 3 major provinces: Zhejiang, Jiangsu, and Shanghai. He has also been instrumental in opening up China's capital market, attracting foreign investment and innovation, and creating new urban areas to address land scarcity. Premier Li took his office this March at China's National People's Congress at a critical moment when China adopted new COVID control measures and started to boost economic development, social dynamism, and international cooperation.
Okay, so a new study out of Denmark finds that transgender individuals have significantly higher rates of suicide attempts. Now, I saw this morning and I thought, okay, they're going to use this to assert that trans kids have a higher risk of suicide if they are not affirmed.
Who's they?
Trans rights activists, we'll call them TRAs.
And the
Because
media.
as soon as and the media, yeah. Because what this shows is that transgender individuals do have a higher rate of suicide attempts and sometimes successful, that's not the right word, completed suicides. Successful, clear. Anyway.
What was the success for them?
No.
Right.
Okay. Completed, I guess.
Well, suicide doesn't actually occur unless it's completed,
Yes.
right?
Let's not discuss.
You can't have
this
like half a
any further.
suicide.
Okay. I don't want to
70
use words that are not sensitive to this, but I think that as soon as I saw this, I thought, okay, here comes the rhetoric around it's your fault if you don't affirm them because that there's a higher risk of suicide. So that is our social fault. What I think, though, is that, and I'm going to show you this data, that this shows the opposite. It shows that people who do transition and are affirmed have a higher risk of suicide, meaning that gender dysphoria and risk of suicide do not get mitigated if you transition, because the people this study was looking at were transitioned people. So affirmation does not mitigate the risk of suicide. Neither does affirmation mitigate the risk of gender dysphoria. Those things persist after, meaning transitioning doesn't help. What we do know does help is full puberty. Most research done since the 1970s shows that gender dysphoria resolves by adulthood. So if a child is allowed to complete puberty, that often heals gender dysphoria in between 80 and 90%. Transitioning does not. And if gender dysphoria does go away, the risk of suicide does too, by that logic, right? By transitive property, transitioning a child increases the risk of suicide. Let's look at the data, because as Abigail Schreier points out, this risk of suicide is like a loaded gun. The data here shows, now you look at the transgender individuals on the left, non-transgender on the right, and then I've circled the relative risk. So it shows that there's about a 7.7 times higher incident rate ratio of suicide attempts. It does show that males have a higher likelihood of this than females, which shows biological difference. And it tracks with historical data showing that gender dysphoria is more common among males than females. But take a look at how it also shows a declining rate of suicide also. It shows that this is happening much less now than it did in the 80s. Is that because trans people are actually not persecuted like they tell us that they are in society? Or were they once and they're not? That's a real possibility. But the data does not show an increased risk like we are presented in the media. In fact, it shows a mitigated risk. It does, though, show an overall risk of all-cause mortality, and that, I think, is more concerning than this declining rate of suicide. Take a look at this chart, and I know this looks awful, so I'm going to zoom in on that. I just want you to see what it is. Again, transgender youth on the left, and then non in the middle. What this is showing is the risk of being transgender to all causes of mortality, and it shows the overall risk of being transgender gives you this almost on average 2 times more likelihood of death from other things. What do you think those things are? I don't know. Could it be the medicalization of the body, the hormones and the surgeries that these people are being subjected to?